Man, there's just no stopping Denny Hamlin when it comes to racing at a 1 mile concrete track where he is one of the best at aero blocking. Hey there, race fans. It's Race Day Top 5 with me, Frank 5. The Monster Mile, the 1 mile concrete track that will reach out and grab you any chance that he gets. Miles is lurking, waiting for his victims. This weekend we ran in the hot summer sun in July at this 1 mile concrete track where Miles was able to claim some victims, but he wasn't able to claim the man that came out on top for the second year in a row at this track. Let's get into all that happened at the Monster Mile. Number 1, Hamlin triumphs. Denny Hamlin got his 4th win of the season by winning yesterday's Autotrader EchoPark Automotive 400 at Dover Motor Speedway, beating his teammate Chase Briscoe, Alex Bowman, Kyle Larson, and Ty Gibbs at the finish line. It was a really solid win for Denny Hamlin, the number 11 team. The last time he won a cup race was just last month in the month of June when he was able to win at Michigan. Then the following race, he missed at Mexico City because he was expecting the arrival of his son, which he did, and now he and his fiance have 3 kids, 2 girls and 1 boy. But that's beside the point. Denny Hamlin yesterday had a really solid race. Early on in the race, he pretty much hovered around the top 5. Didn't really make a whole lot of noise, was kind of staying there for a lot of the race. It wasn't truly dominant, but then fate turned his way later in the race when we were having green flag pit stops in the final stage of the race, and there was a little bit of a sprinkle shower entering the direction of Dover Motor Speedway. The rain came briefly and brought out the yellow, and when NASCAR said the track's dry enough to go back to racing and we weren't going to have a red flag at the time, Denny Hamlin's teammate Christopher Bell, who was leading at the time and trying to recover from an earlier incident, he had to come down pit road because he had not yet pitted. Same with the 3-car Boston Dillon. And then the other guy that Hamlin had been in touch with for a lot of the race, Chase Elliott, he also came down pit road, and that put Denny Hamlin into the lead with the possibility of winning the race, possibly legit, like straight on against the opponents for the final 60-plus laps of the race, or with Mother Nature once again on the way with a little bit bigger cell, it would have put Hamlin in position to win the rain-shortened race. Well, Denny Hamlin was able to survive the restart with 60 laps to go and a challenge from behind by his teammate. Then the rain came after the caution for Ross Chastain hitting the wall on the back straightaway. The rain hit the track and it brought all the cars down pit road. But despite that massive cell that blew through, NASCAR was able to dry the track, and Hamlin had to withstand another short run to the finish. Well, not just one try at it, but he had to have 3 restarts to complete this race. He had to hold off the challenge of his teammate Christopher Bell and racing off of turn 4, not even a full lap into being back under green after the red flag. His teammate behind him goes around, bringing out the yellow flag. And then Hamlin has to deal with some Hendrick cars up there like Kyle Larson. Of course, last year Denny Hamlin and Kyle Larson raced for the win, with Larson chasing the 11 car but couldn't get by him because Hamlin was doing a great job at aero blocking on the defense. But then after that restart, here comes another challenger and Hamlin's teammate Chase Briscoe with fresher tires. And just as Briscoe got the second to try to challenge Denny Hamlin, the caution comes out again for Zane Smith wrecking on the backstretch, bringing out another restart, a second restart in overtime. And on that final restart, Denny Hamlin had his teammate underneath of him off of turn 2, and it looked like that Briscoe was going to get the run. But Hamlin, with the run off of turn number 3 and 4 on the high side, was able to triumph and clear over his teammate as they took the white flag. And from there on, I knew it was pretty much over because, especially here at Dover, with aero blocking and being tough to pass in the dirty air, there was no way that Chase Briscoe was going to be able to get around his teammate unless his teammate made a massive mistake. But Denny Hamlin, the veteran that he is, he normally doesn't make mistakes, and he was able to triumph with his 3rd win at Dover Motor Speedway. And he admitted it in his post-race interview about how excited he was. He admitted that in the past, this used to be one of his worst racetracks. When he came here as a rookie, he was like lost. Or he was not really a competitive car as far as winning races. He wasn't able to have a lot of good results. He would struggle and finish multiple laps down at times. But over the years, it seemed like that Hamlin has started to at least get a little more motivation and has been able to try to figure out Dover Motor Speedway more and more as we run here, and he started to get a little bit of a grip on this racetrack. And of course, last year's performance, being able to hold off Kyle Larson at the very end of the race and holding off not one but 2 teammates for the win in the late stages of yesterday's race, that is mighty impressive by Denny Hamlin. And of course, for a guy that has, again, only missed one race this year, but for very good reason, he is still one of the top guys that we have in the Cup Series right now. And you could just, again, see the hunger in him to just not only win races, but chasing that elusive championship. It's a story we continuously talk about. When is Denny Hamlin going to break through and finally become a NASCAR Cup Series champion? And I have to be in the conversation of drivers that didn't win a championship but are one of the greats to ever drive in our sport, like Mark Martin, Junior Johnson, and Carl Edwards. Hamlin is trying to break through that barrier and score that first career Cup Series win. Could it happen this year? It could very well be his year. But that remains for the playoffs to determine whether or not it'll be Hamlin's time to finally win it all. And if he can make it to the Final Four, because he's missed it the last 2 years. But aside from that, it was a clinic that Hamlin put on yesterday, having to defend his teammates, hope that Mother Nature, battling Mother Nature, and then, of course, racing the racetrack itself, Miles the Monster. That's Denny Hamlin for you, and he was able to come through and get the win yesterday. So congrats once again to Denny and the 11 team on their win. Number 2, teammates can't get by their veteran teammate. Yesterday, Chase Briscoe and Christopher Bell came close to trying to take victory from Denny Hamlin. Let's start first with Chase Briscoe, the finish in the runner-up spot behind Denny Hamlin, a second-place effort. That's 2 weeks in a row. Briscoe's had very good showings to try to win the race, but can't seal the deal. Last week, he finished runner-up to Shane Van Gisbergen at Sonoma because, well, SVG on road courses, how are you going to beat that? Chase Briscoe finally tweeted in a funny post saying, happy to have the second best car all day long and have a great second place finish. We'll take that going forward. I mean, you'll take the momentum, but you'll want to win, of course. With the metrics that set up the lineup, because qualifying and practice were both rained out on Saturday, Chase Briscoe was able to start in the front row and actually took the lead for the first 13 laps, and then after that he got passed, and then it looked like he kind of settled around 5th to 8th to 9th place for the rest of the race. It didn't really look like they had a winning car under them at all in the number 19 car, and they were just trying to finish the day strong for a day that was mainly dominated by Hendrick cars and Gibbs cars. But late in the race, when we was able to resume the race and get the race back going, after the red flag with the rain delay, Briscoe was one of the few cars that elected to come down pit road and put on some tires. And when we dropped that green flag with 10 laps to go, or under 10 laps to go, my goodness, he was charging through the field, getting all the way up to 4th spot at the time that his teammate a few rows ahead of him was spinning around. And then Briscoe put himself up in the top lane on the next restart behind his teammate, and that allowed him to get an amazing drop off of turn number 2 to close up on his teammate, Hamlin, and then the caution came out again, which would put Briscoe on the front row. I thought, with those fresh tires, there's no way that Denny Hamlin is going to be able to hold off Briscoe right here. And when we got that final restart, Briscoe going into one had a little bit of an advantage ahead of Hamlin. I thought if he could stay side by side with him and then carry the momentum into turn number 3 and clear Denny, it's over. But unfortunately, Hamlin stayed with him on the top the entire time, and when they got off the 3 and 4, Hamlin got the better runoff with the older tires, and that higher groove being the advantage. He was able to clear Briscoe, and Briscoe couldn't catch him at all, even though he was trying. And of course, Chase Briscoe would not wreck a teammate for the win. If it was somebody else in that race, well, that could have been a completely different story, especially with them running side by side. He could have maybe pushed his car a little bit up the track to force the guy on the outside of him to go wide. But when it's a teammate, you don't want to do that to piss off the boss man and Joe Gibbs. But unfortunately, at the end of the day, it's not a win for Chase Briscoe, but it's a solid result. And really, since the summer has kicked in, Chase Briscoe is starting to find a groove here at Joe Gibbs Racing and having some good results. He'll get that second win with the team, mark my words. Then we have the other teammate that tried to go for the win, in Christopher Bell. He had, perhaps, early on in the race, the best of the Joe Gibbs Racing cars. He played second fiddle in the first stage behind Chase Elliott. Then we get to stage number 2. He was actually able to take the lead during green flag pit stops, especially when the 9 car had a mistake. Bell was able to hold the lead, and he was able to run out the rest of that stage and get his second stage win of the season. It's hard to believe, isn't it? Christopher Bell's got 3 wins on the season, and this was only his second stage win? Can you believe that, folks? But when we started the final stage, going into turn number 3, Bell on the outside of Elliott, it looked like he hit one of the dips, and it upset the bounce of the car. It sent Christopher Bell around, and thankfully, everybody coming from behind did not hit him. How nobody hit him, I will never know. I mean, he did a great job holding the car in place as best he could until the pack rolled by him, and he prayed that nobody hit him at all. And thankfully, he was able to get out of that, come and get some tires. But unfortunately, that meant having to restart in the middle of the pack, considering that there were quite a few amount of cars on the lead lap at the time. I thought then and there's no way Christopher Bell's getting back up there and winning this race because it's so tough to pass in that dirty air, despite them loosening the car up to help him make a little bit of better passes. But then when we got into that final round of green flag pit stops with about 70 to 60 laps to go, and then the rain came, Christopher Bell did not pit at the time because he still could extend the stint for a little bit, hoping that the rain would come and maybe it would bring the cars on pit road, and if we didn't restart, he could be the winner. But when he got the call from the race officials that they would be resuming the race because it was only a light sprinkle, Bell had to come down and get his tires and fuel. But thankfully, he benefited because there were not a lot of cars in the lead lap at the time because most of them were trapped a lap down under the sequence of pit stops because of Christopher Bell. And that put him on the front row because Chase Elliott, who was probably going to stay out, he elected to come down pit road as well as everybody else that's still on the lead lap after making their pit stops. That put Bell on the front row of that restart with 60 laps to go, trying to get by his teammate Denny Hamlin the best way possible. He kept running him down, then he fell back a little bit to cool off the tires, then made another run on him, and then when we had that caution for Chastain, and then the red flag, and then we were able to drive the track back up and get it back going, I thought Christopher Bell for sure was going to be able to have a shot to get underneath of Denny Hamlin and get by him for the win. But as they were coming off of turn 4, not even a full lap in, after that restart, Bell on the inside of Hamlin loses the car again, going around on the front stretch and sending a couple cars behind him, Noah Gragson and William Byron in particular, into the inside wall, ending their days, and Bell having to pretty much settle for a rough result. I think he finished in the 16th spot. It definitely sucks, but honestly, the first win of the day, I thought put the nail in the coffin for his chance to try to win, but him staying out and waiting for the rain to come and shake up the field when he hadn't pitted and then getting back on sequence gave him another chance, but that final spin at the end pretty much was the end of it for Christopher Bell. A disappointing day for Bell, but definitely showed some speed, and going forward, I think you've seen the hunger for him to go and get that 4th win of the season is right there. So great performances by Briscoe and Bell, but they couldn't get by their teammate. Number 3, missed opportunity for Elliott. Chase Elliott yesterday, folks, had possibly the best car. He started on the pole because of the metrics based off of points position and last week's results. He led the most laps, 238 laps yesterday, the most he's ever led at a track, aside from Martinsville Speedway, where he led 289 laps back in 2021 when he used that to advance himself into the championship 4 in 21. Yesterday, Elliott had such a rocket ship. That car was hooked up. They got their first stage win of the season, which is also hard to believe that Elliott hadn't won any stages until now. Yesterday, he almost did it at Atlanta, the race that he won, but he got nipped at the line by Tyler Reddick, unfortunately. But yesterday, Elliott had the best car, I think, of the whole field and definitely of the Hendrick cars. But there was a mistake that Elliott did make during pit, or not really the driver, but the pit crew during the green flag pit stop sequence in the second stage. When Elliott was coming in and they were starting to jack the left side, it looked like the jack fell out from underneath the car, and they had to put it back under the jack underneath the car, jack it up so they could change the left side tires. Unfortunately, that cost him the lead and possibly the second stage because he fell all the way back to 5th. He was able to get to 4th. Then the pit crew definitely got him back in the game when he was able to get from 4th to 2nd on that pit stop before the starting the final stage. He was able to dodge Christopher Bell's spin in turn 3. Then Elliott got the lead back, and it looked like he was in control again until that caution for the sprinkle shower came through, and Elliott elected to bring the car down pit road. And a lot of people are screaming on the radio, on social media, why are you doing that? Why are you doing that versus holding track position where you could possibly control the pace for the rest of the race? And, that's a good question to have, but I think at the time, Elliott and Alan Gustafson were trying to be on the offensive, perhaps. They elected to go, though, with right side tires changing. I think that may have been a mistake. If they changed 4 tires, then they could have maybe done some damage to those guys up at the front. But that didn't happen, and when we had those late race restarts, when we resumed the race, Elliott kind of lost some positions with some of the guys coming behind on fresher tires, and at the end of the day, it was a 6th place result for the 9 car. But there's still a lot to be proud about. They brought a very fast car. They led a lot of laps, which they haven't done in many races this year. Yesterday, they were able to build upon their laps led. They had a great running position, and they were in the top 5-6 all day long. No lower than 6, aside from green flag pit stop sequence, which goes on. But they had a very fast car yesterday. And I would like to say this. To all the Elliott fans out there, I know you're passionate about your driver, But calling for Alan Gustafson to be fired, please stop it. Alan Gustafson, now, did he probably make a mistake by bringing the 9 car to pit road instead of maybe keeping out there for track position? Possibly, but at the same time, you got to go with your heart and everything. Alan Gustafson is not a dummy, folks. He's a smart crew chief. He won a championship with Chase Elliott. He almost brought Jeff Gordon 2 championships in his last 2 years as a Cup Series driver full time. Alan Gustafson is not a bad crew chief. Calling for this man to be fired, just stop, please. Your butt hurt because Chase Elliott didn't win the race. Things may not work in your favor. That's racing. I mean, would it have been cool to see the dominant car of the day win yesterday? Absolutely. With the clinic they put on, who wouldn't have wanted to see Chase Elliott get his 3rd win at Dover Motor Speedway? But things happen, and they happen at your disadvantage. And it happened to Chase Elliott yesterday. But they showed speed. And also, take another positive. Chase Elliott is the regular season championship leader. You would have said that after probably the Michigan race when he was, 80 points behind first place William Byron, and he was 5th in the point standings. He has been on a roll, aside from the 16th place finish at Chicago. He has been on a roll lately with the 3rd place at Mexico City, with the top 5 runs that he's been having, and of course the win at Atlanta has got this team rolling. They are running very consistently and finishing up inside the top 5 and top 10, but with better race cars that are leading laps and performing well. Elliott's going to get that 2nd win of the season, and it could have happened yesterday, but it didn't work in his favor. But things are starting to go in the way in the 9 car with the momentum they got. And Chase Elliott, I think the company have to be pretty proud of that performance. Number 4, tie versus tie. The final race of the in-season tournament will conclude next weekend. This weekend, we decided which 2 out of the 4 drivers that were still alive in the in-season tournament were going to advance to Indianapolis to race head-to-head for $1 million. Yesterday's matchups were Tyler Reddick versus Ty Gibbs. The other matchup was Ty Dillon, the underdog, versus John Hunter Nemechek, if you can believe that. But yesterday, those guys were all bunched together in their matchups pretty much the entire race, racing close with one another. For the majority of the race for Ty Gibbs, who had a really solid car, and lately he has been running a lot better and finishing well. I don't know if it's going to help him point his way in, knowing that there are some wildcard races coming up, and who knows if he can win those races. But yesterday he showed a great resilience with a really solid car, finishing inside the top 10 in the 5th, or in the top 5 actually, in 5th spot. He raced Tyler Reddick for a lot of the race. Late in the race, it looked like it was going to be Reddick over Gibbs, but Gibbs got a better lane choice on one of those restarts, was able to stay ahead of Reddick the rest of the way home to advance. Then we go to Ty Dillon. I mean, this is such an underdog story. For a guy who's actually had a pretty decent season with Colleague Racing, he has gone from the 32nd ranked driver in this in-season tournament, knocking out the number 1 in Denny Hamlin at Atlanta. Then he advanced through the streets of Chicago. He advanced through Sonoma by knocking Alex Bowman out of the way in the last lap. And he does it again, beating John Hunter Nemechek, who's also had a really good 2025 season with Legacy Motor Club, at Dover this past Sunday. And those 2 were around each other for a lot of the race, on the lead lap in the top 25, or sometimes they were running a lap down. But late in the race, one of those late race yellows, the last yellow of the day, Ty Dillon got the free pass over John Hunter Nemechek, all but sealing his spot into the in-season tournament finale at Indianapolis. It's a tie versus tie. Gibbs versus Dillon. It's kind of almost like, those old cartoon or magazine Spy versus Spy? Well, now it's a tie versus tie at Indianapolis. I mean, who would have thought that? I mean, maybe some people would have expected Ty Gibbs, being in a Joe Gibbs car, to make it to the in-season tournament. Did anybody have Ty Dillon for Colleague Racing make it to the in-season tournament finale? I don't think so. But this is just a really cool underdog story to see Ty Dillon in the middle of the season possibly have a chance to win $1 million and taking it from a Joe Gibbs car, or Ty Gibbs, who did not have a great start to the season, now starting to get some momentum and having good results. He's got a chance to win $1 million next weekend. The best finish out of either one of those 2 drivers at the end of the race next weekend will claim the in-season challenge victory and $1 million. It'll be really interesting to see which one comes out on top. Honestly, who's betting against the underdog because of how impressive Ty Dillon and this run he's been on? We don't know what's going to happen next week, but you got to tune in to find out. But very impressive, 2 ties head-to-head in the in-season challenge finale. And number 5, the racing at Dover. Obviously, Dover, it's a tough place to pass, especially on this 1-mile concrete track, even though they widen the groove and you're able to run a little higher lanes when we get into some long green runs and put rubber on the track. But it's also a aero-sensitive racetrack where in the dirty air, it's really tough to pass a guy unless if somebody in front of you has a little bit of tire fall off or doesn't get a good exit off of the corners in turns 2 and turns 4. And we saw a lot of that yesterday. Were there some comers and goers throughout the pack? Yes. But of course, the story of Dover yesterday, other than, hardly being able to pass, was a race that was dominated by Hendrick cars and Gibbs cars for a lot of that race. We hardly saw any of the Fords yesterday. The only Fords that were able to get inside the top 10 at the end of the day were Ryan Blaney, Chris Buescher, and Brad Keselowski, 8th, 9th, and 10th place finishers. It was really mostly, again, the Chevrolets of Hendrick, the Gibbs cars from Toyota, and also those 2311 cars showed good pace yesterday with Reddick. Bubba Wallace got his first Dover top 10 yesterday with a 7th place result. Very impressive for him. But again, Dover, it's a tough place to pass aerosensitive. And, they bought a newer tire for this weekend's race, only for Dover and no other track. It was at the tire wear after the first caution of the race for the competition yellow due to no practicing qualifying Saturday. No tire wear, but then you saw some tires begin to fall off at the end of that final run of the first stage when you had Eric Jones go up and hit the wall, and then AJ Allmendinger, who was in a position to get stage points, he lost a tire off of turn 2, and he lost stage points, and then he had brake problems after that. It's a tough time, and Dover, it can reach out and grab you anytime it wants and pretty much affect your race. And it happened to some of those guys yesterday, and some of those guys that were hoping for some good runs, and guys that are around the bubble like Ryan Preece, because he scraped the wall late in that final caution. But Dover, it's a tough place, but sometimes you got to be on your heels and toes no matter what this track. And real quickly, I want to say a kudos to NASCAR when that massive rain spell did come through, but only for a 5-minute shower. And then the sun came out. NASCAR gave it all their best, and they were able to dry the track in under an hour for us to go back and finish the final 14 laps of the race, plus some extra laps in overtime. I give NASCAR a lot of credit. Now, if this was like 40 laps to go in a race, probably was going to be unlikely that we would finish the thing. But with like 14 laps remaining at the time, and NASCAR waiting for that cell to move through and then dry the track, and it's easier to dry concrete than it is asphalt, they did a very impressive job, again, to try and drive for us to have that finish of the race yesterday. So I appreciate NASCAR and give them a massive thumbs up for being able to dry the track so we could see a finish yesterday. We weren't able to on Saturday, given that the rain that was still in the area and with the limited amount of daylight left in the day, there was no way we're going to finish that Xfinity race. To finish the Cup race yesterday, very good job by NASCAR. I do wish, though, that Mother Nature would stay away from Dover because I feel like that's been par for the course the last couple times we've been there. Now we are off to a historic track, one of the greatest racing tracks in the world, Indianapolis Motor Speedway next week, where, of course, it's famous for many key events like the Indianapolis 500, of course, and for NASCAR, it's second year back at the Brickyard 400 after a couple years in the road course, second year of the next-gen car at this track. Should be very interesting to see what happens. I felt like we had a good race last year with some parity, and wondering who was going to win the race when they were on fuel strategies or had really dominant cars, and someone like Kyle Larson coming back to the track where he wasn't able to complete the double early in the year because of the weather that implicated that day. Larson was able to win that race and get some redemption, and of course came back to do it this year, even though it was another unsuccessful try at it. But Indianapolis has provided a lot of excitement, and whoever wins that historic race adds a crown jewel to their name and gets to kiss the auto brakes. So who will come out on top next week? Will it be Denny Hamlin, who's been on a roll, and he hasn't yet to win the Brickyard 400? He would love to win this race. Or could it be Kyle Larson going back-to-back at this race? Or could it be somebody else, maybe somebody that is in a must-win situation, or somebody that's trying to win $1 million? We shall see, but I hope everybody will be excited to tune in next week for one of NASCAR's crown jewels. So hope you all have a wonderful rest of your week. Subscribe, like, and congrats once again to Denny Hamlin and the 11 team on their win yesterday at Dover. Have a great week, everybody. Let's go racing!